They don't build them like this anymore, and farmers know it. These plows survived rocks that would shatter modern steel, plowed through the Dust Bowl's ghost and the muddiest springs on record, and still fire up today after sitting in a fence row for 40 years. Some cost less than $200 brand new. Some are worth more now than the day they were sold. 10 legendary moldboard plows farmers refuse to give up. Let's dig in. Number 10. International Harvester. Number 8. Little Genius. Let's start with a plow whose name says it all. The International Harvester Number 8 Little Genius was a trailing or pull-type moldboard plow that International built for an astonishing stretch from the late 1920s all the way into the mid-1950s. That means it worked right through the 1940s, behind the Farmall H, the Farmall M, and just about every letter series tractor a farmer could hook it to. Here's why farmers loved it. The Little Genius wasn't fancy, and that was the point. It was a simple rugged frame carried on 2 or 3 steel or rubber-tired wheels, and it lifted out of the ground with a rope trip power lift. You pulled a rope from the tractor seat, a clutch caught the wheel's rotation, and the plow raised itself at the end of the row. In an era before 3-point hitches were common, that was a genuine labor saver. The real genius, though, was the bottom system. The Little Genius could be fitted with a whole family of interchangeable bottoms, the cast iron shares, the Ace bottoms, the Rex bottoms, and more. If you farmed sticky clay, you chose a bottom that scoured. If you farmed sod, you chose a bottom that rolled the furrow clean. One plow frame, many personalities. A farmer could re-equip the same machine for different soils instead of buying a new plow. Most Little Geniuses you'll find today are 2-bottom units, a 2x14 or a 2x12, sized for the horsepower of the day. They came in 1, 2, and more bottom versions to match the tractor pulling them. The Little Genius earned its reputation the honest way. Decades of dependable furrows. Restorers still drag them out for plow days, bolt on a fresh set of shares, and put them right back to work. Proof that a simple design done well can outlive the man who bought it new. Number 9. Case Centennial Plow. Next up is a plow with a story built into its name, J.I. Case introduced the Centennial plow in 1940, and the Centennial tag was a nod to a full century of steel plow progress. Case drew on the Grand Detour plow heritage it had folded into the company years earlier. When it hit the market, a 3-bottom, 16-inch Centennial sold for about $165. That was real money on a 1940 farm, but farmers paid it, and they kept paying it as the plow stayed in production right through the 1950s. So what did that money buy? Case built the Centennial around a bold marketing claim. It was an easier pulling plow than the competition. The frame and beam geometry were designed so the plow needed less land pressure to hold its cut, which meant less drag, less fuel, and less strain on the tractor. For a farmer running a 2-cylinder or 4-cylinder tractor with limited horsepower, an easier pulling plow was the difference between finishing the field and stalling out in the wet spots. The Centennial also gave farmers a choice of bottoms, and this is where it got clever. You could order it with a standard full moldboard, or with a slat-bottom moldboard, a moldboard made of spaced steel bars instead of one solid sheet. In heavy, mucky gumbo ground, that solid moldboard would smear the soil instead of turning it, and you'd finish a pass with 3 or 4 inches of mud stuck to the plow. The slat bottom had less surface area, so it scoured cleaner and actually rolled the furrow the way it should. You'll find Centennials as 2, 3, and 4-bottom pull-type plows, many of them originally riding on spoked steel wheels, a clue to just how early these machines were. Farmers hung on to the Centennial because it did exactly what Case promised. It pulled light, it scoured in bad dirt, and it kept turning furrows season after season. Today it's a favorite at steam and gas engine shows, often paired behind a vintage Case LA or SC, still rolling black ribbons of soil for a crowd. Number 8. Oliver Raydex Plows. Now we come to a plow that quietly changed the entire industry. In 1940, Oliver introduced a new kind of plow bottom and gave it a name that farmers would repeat for generations, Raydex. And here's the remarkable part. Nearly every modern throwaway plowshare you can buy today is a descendant of the Oliver Raydex bottom. To understand why that mattered, you have to understand the old way. For a century, a plowshare, the pointed cutting edge that slices the soil, was a heavy piece of steel that dulled with use. When it wore out, you either paid a blacksmith to re-sharpen and re-temper it, or you wrestled with replacing a big, expensive component. It was slow, costly, and a constant headache. Oliver's Raydex bottom flipped that on its head. It used a cheap replaceable share, a throwaway point. When it wore down, you didn't sharpen it, you unbolted it, tossed it, and bolted on a fresh one from a handy box of 6. Oliver advertised that 4 Raydex points did the same work as one old-fashioned share and cost roughly half as much over the life of the plow. For a farmer counting every dollar, that was revolutionary. The Raydex bottom was also built for speed. The older horse-era bottoms were shaped for a slow walk. Oliver designed the Raydex to run at around 4 miles an hour behind a tractor, high speed for 1940, turning a cleaner, faster furrow. The complete Raydex base bundled the frog, moldboard, share and landside into one unit, and Oliver offered it in 12, 14, 16 and 18-inch sizes, with general-purpose sod and clay versions for different ground. You'll find Raydex bottoms on Oliver's tractor-drawn plows, models like the 416, a 4-bottom 16-inch pull type, pulling behind Oliver 77s and 88s across the Corn Belt. Farmers loved the Raydex because it saved them money, saved them time, and plowed as well as anything on the market. It was so good that every other major manufacturer copied the idea within a few years. Oliver is long gone, but every farmer who bolts on a fresh throwaway share today is, whether they know it or not, using Oliver's 1940 idea. Number 7. John Deere No. 44. You cannot tell the story of American plows without John Deere, the company that built its entire empire on the self-scouring steel plow back in 1837. By the 1940s, Deere was the largest plow maker in the world, and one of its workhorses was the John Deere No. 44, a tractor-drawn moldboard plow manufactured from 1945 clear through 1957. The No. 44 landed at the perfect moment. World War II was ending, farm boys were coming home, and tractors were finally replacing the last of the horses on family farms. Deere needed a plow that any farmer could hook behind a Model A, a Model B, or the new numbered series tractors, and the No. 44 fit the bill. It was most commonly a 2-bottom plow, offered on steel wheels for the old-timers and on rubber tires for those upgrading to pneumatic everything. What made the No. 44 a farmer favorite was its no-nonsense reliability and its power lift. Like the best pull-type plows of the era, it raised and lowered with a trip mechanism driven off the land wheel, so the operator never had to climb down at the end of a row. You'd trip it, the plow would lift, you'd swing the tractor around, trip it again, and drop back into the ground for the return pass. Hour after hour, day after day, it just worked. It also shared John Deere's famous parts network. If you broke a share or a landside, your local green and yellow dealer could get you fixed and back in the field, and that dealer support is a big reason farmers stayed loyal to Deere iron for generations. The No. 44 also had close cousins, like the 3-bottom John Deere No. 55 with its hydraulic lift, giving bigger tractors more capacity. The No. 44 is one of those plows that never made headlines but quietly turned millions of acres. Its 12-year production run tells you everything. Deere doesn't build the same plow for over a decade unless farmers keep buying it. Restored 44s are common today precisely because so many were made and so many were kept. Number 6. Ford Dearborn Moldboard Plow and the Ford 101 series. In 1947, a single tractor and plow combination changed small farm plowing forever, and the plow was the Dearborn Moldboard Plow, introduced alongside the Ford 8N tractor. This is the plow that put the 3-point hitch in front of the ordinary farmer, and its influence is impossible to overstate. Before the 3-point hitch, a mounted plow was awkward and the plow's depth fought the tractor's traction. The Ferguson system, the hydraulic 3-point hitch Ford built into the 8N, solved that with draft control, letting the plow and tractor work as one unit. The Dearborn Moldboard Plow, often called the Prior model, was the 2-bottom implement designed to ride on that hitch from 1947 to 1950. It came in a 14-inch 2-bottom, the 10-1, a 12-inch and even a 10-inch version, sized so a little 8N could actually pull it in most soils. Then Ford made it better. In 1950 came the Dearborn Economy Plow. Model 10-156 was the popular 14-inch 2-bottom, with an improved frame and, importantly, throwaway shares in the Raydex style. Around 1954, the Dearborn name was absorbed directly into Ford, and the same equipment carried on with new identification tags. Later, the Ford 101 series plow took over, becoming one of the most recognizable mounted plows in the country, built and sold for years and years. Farmers loved these plows for one overwhelming reason: they were easy. You backed the little Ford up, dropped 3 pins, and you were plowing. At the end of the field, you simply raised the hydraulics. No rope, no trip clutch, no climbing down. For the small operator, the truck farmer, the part-timer with 40 acres, this combination was liberating. The 8N and its Dearborn plow were so well matched that veteran farmers still argue the pair could turn a two-bottom furrow in most ground all day on a tank of gas. The plows were simple to fix, parts stayed available for decades, and countless 101 plows are still hitched to old Fords in fields and food plots today. When you picture a red and gray tractor pulling a plow, this is almost certainly the plow you're picturing. Number 5. Allis-Chalmers Snap-Coupler Plows, Series 70 and 80. Allis-Chalmers had its own answer to the hitch problem, and it had a name farmers still say with a grin: the Snap-Coupler. From roughly 1948 into the late 1950s, Allis-Chalmers built its mounted moldboard plows, the Series 70 and Series 80 among them, around this quick-attach system, and it made hooking up an implement almost effortless. Here's how the Snap-Coupler earned its keep. On a WD or WD-45 tractor, the operator could back the tractor toward the plow, and a spring-loaded hook would automatically snap onto the implement's coupler bar. No getting off the seat, no lining up pins by hand, no pinched fingers. You backed up, you felt the catch, and you drove away plowing. In the muddy reality of spring fieldwork, that convenience was worth its weight in gold. The Series 70 and 80 mounted plows were commonly two-bottom units, a 2x16 or 2x14, matched to the Persian orange Allis tractors of the era. Because they were carried on the tractor rather than trailing behind on their own wheels, they turned tight at the headlands and backed into corners a pull-type plow could never reach. The high-clearance frames also handled trash and corn stalks well, so they didn't plug up in heavy residue. Farmers who ran Allis iron were fiercely loyal, and the Snap-Coupler is a big reason why. Once you'd hitched implements the easy way, going back to fumbling with drawbar pins felt like a punishment. The system worked across a whole line of Allis implements, not just plows, so a farmer's whole toolkit clicked together the same simple way. One word of caution that old-timers still pass down: a genuine Snap-Coupler plow uses the correct top connectors, and over the years some folks bolted the wrong lift arm connectors onto these plows to make them fit other hitches. Done wrong, that's dangerous, and the safe fix is to find the proper connectors from the matching series. Set up right though, the Allis-Chalmers Snap-Coupler plows were a joy to run, and their clever quick hitch put Allis a step ahead in the convenience race of the 1950s. Number 4. Massey Ferguson MF 880. By the late 1960s, tractors had grown up, farms were bigger, horsepower was climbing, and farmers needed plows that could carry more bottoms and cover more ground per day. Massey Ferguson answered with the MF 880, a heavy-duty semi-mounted moldboard plow that became one of the most popular plows on the market, and one farmers still hunt for today. The MF 880 was a semi-mounted design, and that's a key idea worth explaining. A fully mounted plow hangs entirely on the three-point hitch, which limits how many bottoms a tractor can carry. A semi-mounted plow attaches to the tractor at the front, but carries its own wheel at the rear, so the tractor doesn't have to lift the whole weight. That let the 880 stretch out to 4, 5, 6, even more bottoms. You'll see 880s configured as 5x16 and 6x16, pulling behind the mid-size Masseys like the MF 165, 175, and 180. Farmers loved the 880 for two big reasons. First, it pulled easy. Veterans who ran an 880 next to competing semi-integral plows of the day often said the Massey was the lighter pulling machine, which saved fuel and let a given tractor handle one more bottom than expected. Second, it had a smart trip system. Massey used what it called a toggle trip on the bottoms. When a share hit a buried rock or root, the toggle would let the bottom kick back instead of snapping the beam. You still had to stop and reset it, but it saved you from breaking iron in stony ground, and later 880s were even offered with hydraulic and spring reset bottoms for hands-off protection. The 880 also came loaded with practical features: a hydraulic tail wheel, a side gauge wheel, cover boards, also called trash boards, to tuck residue down into the furrow, and cushion coulters to slice a clean furrow wall. It was a plow designed by people who understood a long day in the field. Rugged, efficient, and endlessly rebuildable, the MF 880 turned millions of acres from the late 60s onward. Wear parts are still available, which is exactly why you'll find 880s still working small acreages and food plots, and still selling well at farm auctions. Number 3. John Deere F145 Semi-Integral Plow. Here's a plow that defined big farm moldboard plowing for a generation. The John Deere F145. From the 1960s and right through the 1980s, the 145 series was the semi-integral plow you saw folded up along the edge of countless Midwestern fields, and for many farm families it was simply the plow, the one Dad ran and Grandpa ran before him. The F145 was a semi-integral or semi-mounted plow, following the same logic as the Massey 880, hitched to the tractor's three-point up front, carried on its own wheel at the rear, so a farmer could run more bottoms than a fully mounted plow allowed. The F145H, for example, was a 5-bottom version, and Deere offered the series in a range of bottom counts to match everything from a 4-cylinder utility tractor to a big row crop machine. What made the 145 a legend was its fit within the whole John Deere system. It matched Deere's tractors, used Deere's bottoms, and leaned on the biggest dealer parts network in farming. When you broke a share in the middle of planting season, you could get one, and that reliability of supply is worth as much to a working farmer as the iron itself. The plow's design was clean and proven. Solid beams, replaceable shares and shins, cover boards to bury the trash, and coulters to keep the furrow wall sharp. Farmers ran F145s hard. These plows saw thousands of acres, got parked outside, got dragged out every fall, and just kept turning ground. That durability is exactly why so many survive, and why you'll still hear farmers on hay and tillage forums say they plowed for years with an F145 and only sold it because they moved to no-till. The 145 wasn't the flashiest plow ever built. It was something better, dependable, well-supported, and perfectly matched to the tractors of its day. For the heart of the moldboard era, when turning the whole field black every fall was simply how you farmed, the John Deere F145 was the tool that got it done, year after year after year. Number 2. International Harvester 720 Automatic Reset. If you ask farmers across the upper Midwest which moldboard plow ruled the fields, one number comes up again and again: the International Harvester 720. This was IH's semi-mounted automatic reset plow, and in stony, root-filled country it developed a following so devoted that farmers say it ruled for 40 years. The magic of the 720 was in that phrase, automatic reset. In rocky ground, a rigid plow bottom hitting a buried boulder at 4 or 5 miles an hour is a disaster. You snap beams, bend frames, and lose your afternoon to repairs. The 720's bottoms were mounted on heavy spring reset standards. When a bottom struck an obstruction, it would trip up and back automatically, ride over the rock, and then snap right back down into the ground, all without the operator stopping, backing up, or climbing off the tractor. In a field full of glacial rock or ledge, that feature wasn't a luxury. It was the only way to plow at all. The 720 was a semi-mounted plow, so it hitched to the tractor at the front and rode on its own wheels at the rear, letting it carry serious capacity. You'll find 720s built as 4, 5, 6, and 7 furrow plows, with 16 and 18-inch bottoms, behind big International and other high-horsepower tractors. It was part of IH's respected automatic reset family alongside the 700, 710, 770, and 800, but the 720 is the one whose name became shorthand for a tough, reliable, big-acre plow. Farmers loved the 720 because it let them plow ground that would have destroyed a lesser plow. It came with coverboards, cushion coulters, gauge wheels, and hydraulic controls, and its heavy iron simply refused to quit. Owners talk about rebuilding the spring resets once in decades of use and running the same plow across 2 generations. That's the ultimate compliment for a piece of farm equipment. Not that it was cheap or clever, but that it survived the hardest ground you could throw at it and kept coming back. In rocky country, the IH 720 wasn't just loved, it was trusted, and trust is the rarest thing a farmer ever gives a machine. Number 1. John Deere 2450 Semi-Integral. Our number 1 takes us to the far end of the moldboard era, to the plows that carried the tradition into the 1980s and 1990s, right up to the moment the moldboard plow itself faded from the American farm. Chief among them was the John Deere 2450, a semi-integral moldboard plow introduced in the mid-70s and built as part of Deere's 1350, 1450, 2350, 2450 line, with the later 2600, 2700, and 2800 series carrying the torch after it. By this point, plow design had reached its peak. The 2450 was a heavy semi-integral plow available with a farmer's choice of trip protection, a spring reset for hands-off rock protection, or a hydraulic reset system that let the bottoms trip and reseat under hydraulic pressure. It came in multiple bottom counts to match the big diesel tractors of the era, with an on-land or in-furrow hitch, cover boards and coulters, everything a large operation needed to turn hundreds of acres each fall. Farmers valued these late-model Deere plows for their sheer capability. Matched to a powerful four-wheel drive or a big row crop tractor, a 2450 or its 2600 series successor could roll furrow after furrow at good speed, folding down crop residue, burying weeds, and leaving that clean black seedbed that defined conventional tillage. And once again, Deere's parts and dealer network meant these plows stayed running. But here's the bittersweet truth that makes these plows number one. They were the last of a breed. Moldboard plow production in America peaked back in the 1950s and 1960s, when manufacturers shipped somewhere between 75,000 and 140,000 plows every single year. Then it collapsed. As no-till and conservation tillage spread, protecting soil from erosion and saving fuel, plow sales cratered. By 1991, U.S. manufacturers shipped only around 1,400 moldboard plows in the entire year. So the John Deere 2450 and its successors weren't just excellent plows, they were the closing chapter of a two-century story that began with John Deere's own steel plow in 1837. Farmers loved them for the work they did, and held on to them for what they represented. The end of an era when turning the earth was simply what every farmer did. If you ran one of these plows, or your family did, tell us which one down in the comments and which plow you think we missed. If you enjoyed this trip through farming history, hit that like button and subscribe for more classic iron. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next furrow.